Elizabeth, are we good to go?
Recording in progress.
All right, it's 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Meetings of the Municipal Council are being held in hybrid fashion. That is, members of the public can view council meetings on YouTube and Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chambers at Provo City Hall. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast. We'll take a roll call. We have Councillor Bill Fillmore, Councillor Dave Shipley, Councillor Shannon Ellsworth, Councillor Rachel Whipple, myself, Catrice McKay, Councillor Travis Hoban, Councillor George Hanley. And on the bench with us, we also have Mayor Michelle Kafusi, Wayne Parker, our legal counsel, Brian, and Executive Director, Justin Harrison. Our opening prayer today will be provided by Trevor Jones. Thank you so much, Trevor. The Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Councillor Hanley. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes has been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comments on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and your city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. So we will do public comment right now if anyone would like to speak.
Distinguished Mayor and City Council. My name is Bonnie Schiffler Olson.
Is the microphone on? Okay.
I am a longtime resident of Provo and a peer support specialist serving the unhoused on our city streets. I believe in the heart of Provo. On this day, the day of Valentine's and chocolate, I ask you to think about what love feels like. My brother Michael, who lives on the street, taught his daughters the 3 A's of love: affection, attention, and appreciation. He conveyed to his girls that they deserve to feel seen, heard, and valued. A wise Black woman once said, "Love is an action." I believe this statement is true, and so I often think about how I should act if I want others to feel the deepest sentiment in my heart. A great teacher once advised his beloved followers that they should show others the same kindness they hope to receive. Attend to their needs in dark moments, he said. Find the lost sheep and embrace them. While it seems a simple recipe, service equals love. Presently, our city isn't producing heart-shaped cookies. The plight of the unhoused in Provo remains unchanged since last month's city council meeting. Although the city currently offers short-term options to escape the cold, waiting lists, confusing procedures, and the trauma of repeated constitutional rights violations hinder our homeless brothers and sisters from receiving needed shelter and rest. If we do not offer kindness, support through the hours of night, or inclusion on our city streets, how will the unhoused ever feel loved? It is our task as neighbors to hear and value each other as equals. We need a new recipe. I believe that we can be partners in their needed, excuse me. I believe that it can happen and that it will. I offer my deepest gratitude to each of you as you work to do what's right for the unhoused residents of the city that I adore.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment?
My name is Christian David. I live in Pleasant Grove, but I've worked in and out of Provo. I've lived here as a citizen for many years, but now I live in PG. I want to give you a quote. Give me you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. This quote is on the plaque of the Statue of Liberty. Liberty comes from the words libertas, meaning free. This very city celebrates freedom, the Freedom Festival. What does that mean to you? Freedom. Do you believe that every citizen is free to choose in this fair city? There are many out there on the streets in low-income houses who feel targeted, not free because of their circumstances that they are living in right now. Simple laws, yet confusing unconstitutional laws, police state or free state. Simple laws or higher laws, such as the simple golden rule. Do unto others as others have done unto you. It's simple enough, isn't it? Would you not have your son or your daughter out in the street just to survive, trying to stay warm? Would you shelter your child, feed them? Why not others as a collective? Times are changing and changing fast. I see Provo changing quickly and rapidly. And it needs to happen right now before it has an influx of the problems that are coming our way. Get ahead of the game before it becomes a serious problem. More funding, change up your budgeting, less harassment for someone who is just trying to survive and live the next day without freezing to death during the night. Choices and decisions in politics are hard, but love is the easy way. Make the right choice and listen to those who are suffering and only need a hand up, not another stumble and fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Katie Wilkie. I live in Provo as well. I live in Northwest Provo by Provo High School. So I just wanted to lend my support to Vaughn's, and I work with her and met her at the Food and Care Coalition, and I serve a shift with her on Wednesdays at lunch. And I've watched her and the way that she interacts with the unhoused, and it's very inspiring. I was speaking to a gentleman there at lunch a few weeks back and just talking to him, like, how's your day going? Like, and he was saying, like, most of the volunteers that come here, they're great people, but they kind of come and do their thing. They talk amongst each other, like, what's going on with school? Like, how's your job? But they don't really talk to us. But he pointed to Bonds and said, she's different. She actually sits and talks with us, and she listens to us, and she gives us her attention and her love. And I've seen people cry on her shoulder. I've seen women and men that go to her with all of their questions and their troubles where they wouldn't go to other people. All that to say, I am still learning a lot about the plight of the unhoused in Provo, and so I'm fairly new to this, but I am trying to become more informed so that I can hopefully help the situation, as I'm sure a lot of you are probably more aware than I am of some of the situations. But from what I understand, talking to Pastor Justin at Genesis Project, talking to Bonds, talking to people at Food and Care, there does seem to be a gap in the needs of the unhoused in Provo. There are the long-term solutions that they have at Food and Care Coalition. And then of course, there's the voucher program that helps with the very short-term housing to get people out in the cold. But there are still many situations of unhoused in Provo who are able to get to these services. Some of our people, they just aren't able to have that as a solution. And so we do need a more permanent temporary shelter if possible, if at all possible. So I'd really like to work towards a solution of that sort. I'm still learning, like I said, but talking to Justin about the movie nights they've been doing, I think something like that ongoing, more churches that can support would be great. Anyways, I'm here available to talk to if anyone wants to work with me on some of these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone online. So we will go ahead with the meeting. We have an implied motion on a resolution consenting to the appointment of individuals to various boards and commissions. This will be presented by Mayor Michelle Kafusi.
Believe it or not, we are getting almost caught up on boards and commissions. It's been a huge task, and thanks to my staff and to Elizabeth and everyone that's kind of helped with this heavy lift, we're going to get there. So tonight we're going to put 2 more volunteers into positions. So I'm recommending the following appointments to the Provo City boards and commissions and submit them herewith for the council's advice and consent. Beth Allgood has previously served on the Provo Police Citizen Advisory Board, the Provo Southwest Planning Committee, and the Housing Authority. In addition to this, she also served as a neighborhood chair for 5 years. I am recommending Beth be appointed to a 3-year term on the Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee as the District 4 seat with the term ending June 30th, 2025. Eric Chase has previously served on the Provo CDBG Citizens Committee. In addition to this, Eric currently serves as the chair for the North Park neighborhood. I am recommending Eric be appointed to the vacant term left by Jennifer Glebe on the Board of Adjustments with the term ending June 30th, 2027. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any council discussion? Okay, not seeing any discussion, I'll call for a vote. Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
Councillor Hanley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
And that is unanimous for yes, all yeses. A public hearing regarding Home American Rescue Plan and accompanying funds. And this will be presented by Melissa McNally.
Thank everyone. So just to go over a brief history of the Home ARP funding, the American Rescue Plan was enacted in March of 2021, and a significant amount of funding was given to Home with the intent to create a more strategic collaboration with other investment and housing entities to assist those experiencing homeless or at risk of experiencing homelessness. So in September of 2021, Provo City was awarded for Provo and the Utah Valley Home Consortium just over 5.1 million in funding to go towards certain activities. So the funding is intended to benefit, it's It's intended to benefit those who are experiencing homelessness, at risk of homelessness, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And other populations where if they did not have the benefit of supportive services, they would be at risk of being homeless, and veterans and families of veterans that meet one of the above criteria. And then there are these four activities that the funding should be distributed to. And that is the development and support of affordable housing, tenant-based rental assistance, provision of supportive services, and acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter units. So as part of the process for this funding, I collaborated with several agencies that deal directly with the vulnerable populations that were listed on the previous slide. And so through that collaboration, I sent a survey to them. And the objective of the survey was to determine where our service gaps are and what are the most needed services for these vulnerable populations. So we're just going to go over that quickly. You all have copies of the survey, right? Because there are several areas where there were other comments that I think are pertinent, and I don't want to cover them right here, but if you have them, that's great. So the first is identify the populations with the most needs, and these were all ranked. And victims of domestic violence were number one, unaccompanied youth, families, veterans, single adults, and then other, which is there on the bottom. In the second area was to identify the most pressing needs for our vulnerable populations. And number one came up to be supportive services. And the second, development of non-congregate shelter, followed by affordable housing, preservation of affordable housing, and then tenant-based rental assistance. And just for reference, when they are talking about supportive services, if you weren't aware, it's that's pertaining to services that are directly benefit these populations, such as employment assistance and job training, healthcare services, food and case management, assistance in obtaining permanent housing, employment counseling, nutrition counseling, life skills training, mental health services, transportation, those kinds of things. So it's pretty broad, but that's what they're referring to when they're saying supportive services. And then the most needed services for the vulnerable populations were again, funding of supportive services came up number one, and then acquisition and development of non-congregate shelters, followed by rental assistance and development of new affordable rental housing. And lastly, they were asked to identify the most and rank the most unmet needs in the vulnerable populations, and these would be the gaps in services. The number one gap was development of a non-congregate shelter, and then followed by supportive services, affordable housing, rental assistance, preservation of affordable housing, and then other. So when we talk about non-congregate shelter, it has been mentioned several times in my meetings with the continuum of care members that the most needed housing is the temporary housing that's 30 to 60 days before those who are experiencing homelessness enter into more permanent supportive housing. So, and one of the other comments I'm sure you all noticed as you're reading through I did ask for an open-ended question just for any other thoughts that our service providers had. And there was an overwhelming response of a need for shelter and assistance for victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse. And so I think one can gather that when we're talking about non-congregate shelter and emergency, that 30 to 60 days, we're looking at housing people that are in desperate need of that housing. I forgot what I was going to. Sorry. So just a reminder that because this is the Utah Valley Home Consortium, this isn't just for Provo. This funding can be used throughout Utah County, throughout most cities in Utah County. And then just to go over the next steps for this funding, because we are putting together the allocation plan. So we're going to tell HUD, these are the activities we're going to use this funding for. And so tonight is kind of like an opening of a public comment period where people can leave feedback and give their input on where they think the funding would be most beneficial with these Home American Rescue Plan funds. So this public comment period will go till March 4th. And then we'll close it, and then we will produce a draft of the allocation plan. And at that point, I'll come back to you and present that draft and open another public comment period for the draft of the plan. So do you have any questions for me?
Counselor Fillmore.
Do you have any data on the comparative homeless populations in the county? If this is a county-wide program where the homeless or the unhoused concentrated, do you have numbers?
I do not have numbers, not with me. I have reports from the continuum of care. They go out and do the point in time counts to count the homeless. They just did that a couple of weeks ago. We are using numbers from last year's report since this was just recently done again. I would say that the majority of the homeless would be concentrated here in Provo because the majority of the services are here in Provo. So,
well, that's my assumption. So what follows logically is that the largest allocation of funds would probably ought to come to Provo since we have the highest homeless population. But if we had actual numbers, and even if we're using last year's, then it'd be best if it could be updated, but
right.
you'd have some data on that would be a very helpful consideration.
Yes.
We did know that survey just happened recently, but we are very anxious, and this reminder for staff that we want to get those numbers as soon as they are available from the continuum of care.
For this year's point in time count, or are you looking at the numbers that we're using?
We'd like to see both.
Okay.
We want the one that they just did, and then last year's would be great.
Because I'm happy to send you the report. They do it statewide and compile a statewide report, and it has Utah County specifically. One of the caveats of this funding is it is used specifically for those activities. And there has to be justification to use those activities. So when you are talking about numbers, when we go to HUD and say we want to fund, this is what we want to fund, we have to prove that those areas need to be funded. So just to your point, there will be numbers that will back up any of the funding decisions that are made.
Great, that'll be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Hanley.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is, so from what you said, the initial opinions seem to correspond with what the young woman said at the beginning, that there's a sort of mid-range shortage of housing type for.
Right.
My second question is that if that's the case, and we saw that there was funding that could help us find that kind of service, given the issue that Mr. Fillmore alluded to, is the county involved in this decision-making process to kind of bring, maybe I'll use a stronger word, force other cities in the county to cooperate and be part of the problem? Or is this going to be a situation where only the city that wants to stick its neck out to try to do something is the one that's going to do it? And that doesn't seem like it gets at the root of the problem with the whole county. Anyway, I'm just wondering how do we avoid the problem where every city is pointing at everybody else saying you do it? And it seems like the county could be a real helpful partner in saying, we're going to do a countywide solution. We're asking for this kind of level of cooperation from all the cities rather than it just grinding into a fight.
Yeah, they could be. It would be great if they would be more involved. And if you know somebody there that you can send my way, I am happy. I'm happy to.
I mean, I know their names. If that's what
I mean, I know the commissioners' names too, and
yeah, I know
yeah.
you do.
But no.
So far they're not involved at all.
Yeah, no.
When
When it comes to the home funding and the county and stuff, that's there's a reason that Provo's in charge of all of that.
Okay.
Because we'll.
Well, maybe I'll talk to you afterwards about how to, because I'd like to. I mean, if we're unsuccessful, we're unsuccessful, but I would like to make a special plea to them for involvement. Thanks.
Any more questions for Melissa? Counselor Whipple.
So for how much longer will we be getting the ARP funds?
So this funding, we have to put a plan together and submit it to HUD by March 31st or we lose the funding. So this is just us telling HUD, this is how we're going to use the money. It's not saying we're specifically going to allocate this. But at that point, once we've submitted the plan and HUD has accepted it, we have until 2030 to spend it.
And these ARP funds aren't something that are going to continue to be available. We'll have to go back to our other funding sources after
Right.
this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Melissa. We're grateful that you're working on this. An implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code Chapter 9.06, Public Disturbances regarding the discharge of fireworks as permitted in state code. This will be presented by council staff. By Michael.
Good evening, council. So once again, this is just the ordinance that we discussed in work meeting regarding bringing the Provo City Code in compliance with state code to allow an exemption in sound ordinance for various holidays that are approved by the state legislature.
Thank you. We've been waiting for this for a long time, so we're grateful to Elizabeth for getting it going. Any council discussion or questions for Michael? All right, I think we're ready for a vote. Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yeah. Did we have to open it up for public comment?
No.
No? Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Did have to open it for public. Brian,
Okay, it's not, this is one of those ones that's not required. Custom and practices that we normally do. And you're welcome.
would
to ask
anybody
if-
like to comment on the fireworks ordinance? All right. Thank you for the reminder, Counselor Hoban. All right, well, that was unanimous.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, we're not done. Counselor Ellsworth.
Yes.
I'm learning. All right, that was now unanimous. All right, an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code Chapter 9.20 Urban Forestry to correct a typo. And this will be presented by Mark Ao.
Yep. Again, this is just a code for
for code cleanup ordinance, removing that extra modal verb, shall in our city code about, for, yep, removal of that one. The council proposed this cleanup ordinance to, to make the necessary correction.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. I'd like to open this for public comment. This is a nail biter. Anybody?
I have a comment.
It's not your turn yet.
I spoke to the elementary school kids this week and I was asked, what is the most tedious thing you've ever had to do on this? And I now have a new winner.
Typos. All right. Thank you, Mark. Any more discussion? All right. I'm going to call for a vote. Counselor Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes. Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
and Counselor Fillmore. And
Yes.
that was unanimous. All right, one more for the night, and then we're off to Valentine's festivities. Okay, an implied motion on a resolution accepting or denying an annexation petition for further consideration for the Scotty Dog annexation. This will be presented by our planner, Brandon Larson.
Thank you, council. Scotty Dog, I can explain that if I can get this thing to work.
We can tell you why it's named that. It's named that because the outline of the property, they believed it looked like a Scotty dog. And so that's why it's now,
Body of water.
Yep.
they call it the Scotty dog property.
Here it, no, here. This piece right here. There's the ears. There's no tail poking out right there, but it was close. So this is a proposal to annex in 106 acres of land just south of the golf course, Timpanogos Golf Course. It's all city-owned land, 5 acres or 5 parcels, and then a portion of a 6th. One thing that is important with this annexation, usually when we bring something in, there's usually a development proposal tied to this. There is no development proposal. It's just simply to bring this land into the city so we can patrol it better. There's concern. There's concern about some activities that have occurred on the property in the recent past, and so the city wants to keep a closer eye. And so we feel like bringing that into the city will help us keep a better eye. So again, as I noted earlier today, the Springville borders right there on your, take it down one more here. Springville borders right there. So if you guys decide, if the council decides to bring this in, your border will touch Springville there. The annexation policy plan, this is an annexation policy plan 2, which calls for a parks, recreation, and open space land use designation. And along with that would come an open space preservation and recreation zone. So the idea is not to do anything on this property, just to bring it in and keep it natural. There's a lot of wetlands there, so keep that sensitive land doing what it's doing now. And so again, as I noted earlier to you today, if you choose to, all we're asking today is for you to accept this petition so the annexation process can continue. If you accept the petition, it'll go to the city recorder and the city attorney's office for a compliance check to make sure that all the codes are being met. That's if everything checks out, city recorder certifies the petition, and then we start our noticing activities, planning commission, and come back to you for a hearing and then final decision. And then if the council adopts an ordinance to approve the annexation, we'll get the lieutenant governor to sign off and get this thing recorded. So again, our simple request tonight is just for you to accept the petition, and that petition only includes signatures from Provo City because it's all, again, Provo City land. So pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, I'm here to.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. I do have a question I'm just curious about.
Sure.
Why, if Provo City owns this, why is it not already part of Provo City? And it was just after we were incorporated, we bought this land down the road or recently, or?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why we haven't brought that in. I do have a lot of Provo City property kind of out near the boundaries of the city, and this is just one of those pieces that we've just never brought in, perhaps because of its sensitive nature. It's just not something that was critical to bring in until we started having some activity on there that we were considering.
Okay, thank you. Any council discussion? Councilor Fillmore.
Mr. Larson, you got me curious. What are these unwholesome activities that have been going on there?
I wouldn't call them unwholesome. It's just I may not be the most informed on this, but what I'm told is that we've had people that are unhoused that have been camping or frequenting the.
No criminal activity.
I'm not aware of any criminal activity. It's just simply that we've had people living on the property and we want to keep it close.
Just curious. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. Thank you, Brandon. We'll open this this item for public comment. Check online here. Okay. We will call for a vote. Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
Councilor McKay, yes. Councilor Shipley.
Yes.
Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore.
Yes.
And Councilor Hanley.
Yes.
All right, that was unanimous. And if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent. Councilors, you'll want to turn on your mic and speak up if you object. All right, good night.